And we should be, bump, bump, bump. We should be online everywhere, which is perfect. LinkedIn is still playing up, but that's LinkedIn. Amazing. How you been? You've been freaking, I've been watching, you've been a beast.
Yeah. It's been fun. You know, it's at a time like this, you just reach out to friends and some of my coaches, some of my mentors, and everyone who I've asked to help said, yep, what time do you need me? You know, no one's too busy. Obviously people at home, but that doesn't mean folks aren't still real busy. And it's been incredible. I've learned a ton in the last few weeks. So I'm the biggest.
That's always good.
Yeah.
That's always awesome. I've been seeing like, you've been doing like a live stream at least a day.
Yeah. We've been doing like 5 and 4 days. So we do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 2 Eastern, and then a happy hour at 5. And that's been really fun. You know, I had Jason Crawley last night.
Yeah.
Narn Young, Angus Winchester, Julio Cabrera, you know, it's been really cool.
Yeah. Crawley freaking with his broken arm.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Skateboarding accident.
He set his alarm 5 minutes before an interview. Like he's literally wiping the sleep out of his eyes. And I'm like, dude, never change.
It's the time change is not, that's the only downside I'm finding is like I'm doing a lot of 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock night live streams just because of the time change for Australia, Singapore, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So with my podcast, so every day I've been doing it twice a week for about 15 months. So, but with the pandemic kicking off, what I really want to do with Post Shift is with how much information was out there, not necessarily actually from the source. I wanted to sort of pinpoint people and pick off associations, lobbyists, all these sort of things, to bring actual like factual, real information to people so that, and my audience is very broad. It's kind of interesting. My audience goes from 19-year-old bartenders who are just starting out to 45-year-old operators and everything in between. So I do a myriad of different subjects, but the reason why I really want to chat to you is that I think we first met 2007, 2008. I flew out to Toronto and hung out with you guys and hung out with you guys for the Barmetrix team for a couple of days. That would have been 2007, 2008, maybe in 2009. But I really wanted to get into the nuts and bolts of like, I always like to start off with an origin story. Like, how did you get in the game? Have you always been in the game?
Yeah. You know, the working in a restaurant was my third job, but I was like 12. So I had newspapers, had a huge newspaper route, and I cut a lot of grass. And back when riding lawnmowers weren't the thing for like a neighborhood, my dad and I went halves on one. And you know, in the new neighborhoods where you can cut like 5 lawns at once, you know, in big sweeping circles, you know, because there's hardly any trees. But then I you know, winters are tough in Canada, as you know, and I was in Ontario, and it's brutal. And the dream job for a 12-year-old boy in my town was right beside a steamy, hot dishwasher where you had a window that looked out to a sea of pretty waitresses, get free food, French fries, gravy, cheeseburgers. I used to drink a lot of, or consume a lot of, what do you call that foam? The whipped cream in the walk-in box. That was dessert. And so, yeah, I started in restaurants there, dishwashing. And, you know, it absolutely changed my life, you know, not just because it was a good job, but I got really lucky. You know, the guy that owned the place invested in me, invested in everybody there. I was struggling in school. I was struggling at home. And I finally felt like I was at home and I had arrived. And, you know, that time in my life, I was really, really struggling in school. I couldn't read. In fact, I learned to read properly past the 3rd grade level when I was 20 years old. But at that time, he started teaching me how to read P&Ls and balance sheets when I was 13, 14, 15 years old. I was doing full inventory of the business with him, sitting in on supplier negotiations. And it's part of why I do what I do today. You know, we could, this could be a shitty industry for people to work in, or it could absolutely set them up for a brilliant future. And that guy taught me how to be an entrepreneur by the time I was 16.
Wow. And where did that sort of mentorship, which a lot of people are super lucky, I think. That's a wicked story. I never knew that story. Where did that level of mentorship sort of take you after that?
Well, you know, it taught me a few things. You know, one, that school's not the only way to learn, right? And I think it's important for a lot of kids. I think if you're meant to go to university and you know what you're going to do, then you should go do that. I think for everybody else, like I've got 4 kids, and if they don't have a plan, I'm not paying. And I'd sooner see them go put 2 years into an apprenticeship and make minimum wage or $20 an hour, whatever industry they're in. But it taught me that. It taught me that you can learn to learn. It taught me that anything that you want to do, like, you know, we've been doing business this way for about 80 or 100 years. All the answers are out there, right? Find someone generous, and they'll teach you. They'll take you on board. And for every person like that, there might be 10 assholes. That's fine. Like, I can talk to 11 people in a month, right? Like, bump and run. Find the right people to build your future with. And then, you know, I've also learned the beauty and the benefit of being a mentor. Now I work closely with 5 or 6 people a year, you know, just as a mentor, not part of my job. And it's a beautiful thing, you know, to invest in somebody else. And I mean it when I say I always get more satisfaction out of seeing them succeed than I do myself succeeding, right? Like, I've been succeeding for a long time. I'm very lucky. I'm very blessed. And I know that it comes from hard work and taking chances. But when you see somebody who might not otherwise had that particular success at that particular time, get it in part because of your relationship, it's electric, man. It's such a beautiful thing.
So going through the industry, I saw a post the other day. You kicked off your very first restaurant at 27. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. So I left that little town I grew up in of 2,000 people. My parents still live there. My 3 sisters live within 10 miles of my parents. I went to Toronto and worked at a shitty bar. I didn't fail out of school, but I didn't graduate. You know, I was there when everyone else did. I was missing a bunch of credits, so they were pretty sticky about giving me the diploma. But I couldn't read, right? Which meant I couldn't get the English credits. I couldn't get the math credits because you got to read 10, 11, 12 mathematics. So I went and I was working construction during the week. And by construction, I mean pulling nails and lifting heavy shit and digging trenches and working in a bar on the weekend. And I tell you what, it didn't take long for that bar to win over, man. I was making as much money on the weekend and felt like a rock star. So I gave up the construction and I went to work for Hard Rock Cafe in Toronto when it was still cool to work at Hard Rock. You know, Sean, I wasn't, you know, so it was awesome. I worked for Hard Rock, got into management through them, got a chance to go to London through them. And I had been to Mexico once, been a couple spots in Canada, been across the border a couple times. But if you're a kid from a small town in Canada, 2,000 people, and you land at Heathrow, take the tube and come up at Piccadilly Circus, you should be forced to wear a helmet because your head explodes. Like, I just stood there for about 15 minutes and I thought, I'm on the set of a movie, right? Red double-decker buses, the black old cabs, everyone was dressed so cool. Everyone's on the wrong side of the road, you know, pubs open and packed in the middle of the day. And I thought, oh my God, this is heaven. And I never went home. I based myself in London. I didn't work for Hard Rock. I worked for another company, but I based myself in London for 6 years. And I would work and save up and then put my backpack on with my girlfriend. And we went to 30 countries around the world. We just backpacked through Africa and Asia, went to Australia, New Zealand, all over Europe. And that was my university. You know, 6 years was my master's and had some money.
What year was this?
So I was 73, so 93, 91, I kind of went to London and spent that 6 years there. And then I started working for I got into management, multi-site management in London, and then and loved it, but the grind, right? I was a kid, and I was running operations manager for 6 properties, I had to work 7 days a week not because they told me to, but to keep my head above water.
Mm-hmm.
And we brought in a consultant on one of the jobs, and I watched these guys work, and I was fascinated, and that's all I wanted to do. And I applied 39 letters. I wrote 39 letters to these people and followed it up with hundreds of phone calls. And the woman that answered the phone about 80% of the time, an older lady, I eventually convinced her to get me in with the owner for one coffee. That's all I wanted. And the owner said that Marcy, the woman that I got to know really well, said
you bugged her incessantly.
Yeah, she told him, she said, this kid's either insane or just incredibly persistent, and either way, it'd be an entertaining coffee. Take it. And I started with them, and entry level, like running coffees. Photocopy machine was the size of a car, and I worked my way up with them and learned the art of the turnaround. How do you turn around a business without any money really, except the acquisition price? And I learned to do that working with them on components. And one of the assignments that I went to was actually part of a convention in Sydney. I landed in Sydney, and it was my second aha moment. I'm like, oh my God, I am never leaving here. It was like London all over again with beaches. And I'm like, shit, it's summer all year round. The most beautiful people in the world, just kind, generous. I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me, And I stayed, and I was there for 10 years. And then I did that work there for myself. I had a small consultancy company I started, did 4 or 5 projects. And then I said, shit, why don't I do this for myself? And I did. I bought a place for $1 and $600,000 or $700,000 worth of debt. And within 6 years, we had eight properties under management.
Wow. And that was that was your first restaurant. You've actually got a success story out of your very first restaurant, which most people don't actually usually have. They usually have the complete opposite.
Yeah. Well, the first one was in some ways the toughest. It was, there's a formula for running a bar or restaurant, right? And it's like fitness. Like, you can't just sleep well and just exercise well and eat like shit, right? It's more complicated, and there's about 8 different components to it in the bar and restaurant business. But I knew them, and I'd studied enough businesses to know what needed to be done. I was successful as an owner, but it didn't make me extremely happy. I'm not a very good owner in the sense that I'm a very emotional person, right? So I could have a place that would be making money at $35,000 a week, and it's doing 50, but I'm in the parking lot pulling my hair out, wondering why there's no one in there on a Tuesday night. You know what I mean? Like, good owners have perspective. Mm-hmm. They're secure and comfortable. So things that aren't always tagged as labels on me. So there's a DNA to it as well. And I didn't understand that until I was in it. Right. I just didn't.
So what made you make the move? Like, obviously you just talked about your own personal mental health, but the romance of ownership is something that most people in the industry kind of aspire to. At the end of the day, everybody wants their little cafe on the corner or their nightclub bar or something like that. What made you make the move? Was it purely a personal thing, or was it something that sort of called to you that you sort of still wanted to achieve?
I'd say it was a 50-50 combination of arrogance and ignorance. Like, I just thought I could do it. I'm glad I did it in some ways. I made a shit ton of money. But I didn't realize at that point, like, owning a bar or restaurant, like, it's just another job, right? Like, nobody owns it. Look at this shutdown. Like, people are out of business. They didn't have 14 days of cash, right? Nobody owns anything, right? You think you do. You certainly own all the liability and all the responsibility. Like, people ask me why I don't today. I could make more money in a day now than I could in a month owning a bar, right? Like, there's just different ways to make money. And it's all about the value proposition that you deliver, right? You can charge $50,000 a day if you can deliver $250,000 a day worth of value. I didn't understand that back then. I just thought that that was the next step. And that, a part of my ignorance was like, well, why should I keep making money for everyone else? And why not for myself? And I didn't fully appreciate that I didn't have the DNA to be happy in it, right? I could be, being successful and being happy are two different things. It's great to be both, but I was one and not the other. And that showed up, it ground my relationships into the ground. I went from typically being 210 pounds to 275 pounds. I was an asshole a lot, a lot of things that I'm not proud of. And I'm not blaming the role, but if you put yourself in a circumstance that you're not designed for and you haven't properly prepared for, a drowning man is a miserable man. You know what I mean?
Even if he's got
I don't care how nice you are. If you're drowning, you're not using your manners.
So what made you make what year did you make the transition back to sort of full circle, back to your consultancy roots, where obviously you found happiness, but again, like you were saying, success and happiness don't go hand in hand. So you found your happy place. Did it take some time? Because I always find a lot of business people, especially in the hospitality industry, passion versus business doesn't always teeter. It's like more as a teeter-tot, where super passionate, but no business, or tons of business, no passion. How did you find taking that transition back to being a consultant to your happy place, to find your own mental health, but also turn it into the business that it is now?
Yeah. So there was really a progression, and I wish I could say that I had a great plan, but I didn't. The sale of the business came. I had a couple of partners in a couple of the businesses. And then we were able to kind of build a mechanism. I had a really good board. So we built a mechanism that basically had options on other businesses. Like we positioned ourselves well. I knew how to mark a business and how to figure out when someone was drowning across the street. And so I leveraged the group in a way that it was very attractive for sale, not thinking that we get an offer as soon as we did. And what I had planned to do, my unit number was like, I want to get to 20 or 25, right? I got to 8 like that, relatively speaking, starting from 0. And I thought I could get to 25 in nearly the same amount of time, another 6 years. When that offer came in, man, it was a good offer. My board thought it might have been even more generous than what we were worth at the time. And I realized how tired I was, and not just like physically tired, but emotionally tired. And I took it, and it was contingent on a quick sale. They wanted to reposition. They wanted a couple of the assets to do something with. And I took it. And then you find yourself with like some money, right? Like I grew up without any money, and in my whole career, I made enough money to do all the things I want to do, but never had anything in the bank. And suddenly you got this wad that lands in the bank. Then you're forced to realize your relationship with money, which I didn't realize was pretty fucked up as well. It's one thing to have cash flow. It's another to have cash, right? So my plan was to take like a year off and just like catch my breath. I hadn't taken a day off in, ever. And so I planned to take a year off, and that lasted about, a week or 2. And then I thought, you know what? I know so many people who are struggling right now. Like, maybe I'll just spend a couple of months helping other people and just like showing them, because the way that I run a business is very simple, and it's complicated to run a business in a simple way. So I'm good at taking complexity and boiling it down and getting individuals to take ownership and then optimize in positions. So I reached out to a few people and said, hey, I'll take 5 or 10 people on and kind of coach them and show them. They're skeptical. Why would you want to do that? What's in it for you? You just want to look at your books. Because I did have this dark past, right? Where I used to be the Grim Reaper to show up on your door. Now the Grim Reaper's here wearing angel wings. Still with the sickle though.
If Sean Finter shows up on your door, you're about to get bought up for a
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So I earned their trust and said, hey, listen, I just want to help out. And I tell you what, for the third time in my career, I had fallen in love with the work again. First was washing dishes. I know that sounds crazy. It's one of the best jobs I ever had. I was really fucking good at it. People counted on me. I was like, it's just something I took a lot of pride in. And when I wasn't good at anything else in my life, and I did it for a couple of years really well, and I knew where I stood every day. And, so that, then bartending, man, I was never a great bartender, but I was great with people. And you could be 21 years old or 91, and I just have fun with you and try to give someone an experience. So I love that. And then this, like helping people, like I was like, man, it's too bad there's no money in this, like, because it feels so good every day to get up and do this. And I literally helped some people go from like losing 10% a month to making 10% within like 3 or 4 months. And, if you know the formula, you know what to do, the levers to pull. And then a guy who was a board member, who is now still just a friend, said, there is money in this. It's more coaching than consulting, because consulting is kind of like doing the work. It's like being the fat kid that does everyone's homework, and you do the work and you figure out the strategy plan and you come in and execute and you push people along. And, when I was consulting, I did it on a low base retainer, and I got a percentage of profit on the way through. So everyone had to dance. It was tiresome and stressful. Coaching was very different, just teaching people how to build up internal strength, introducing new concepts, plugging in aspects of business that I know work, but they didn't have in place. And that led to, one of the problems I found was that people didn't have the money to pay anything because they were losing money, right? And if you get to pay your meat supplier, your landlord, or me, I'm always going to lose. So I said, well, what if I went in and captured money that was just, I saw the boat and it was taking on water. What if I plugged a hole? So that's when I got involved in inventory control. And I said, if I could take an Australian business, which still to this day loses an average of 10% of their liquids, and bring that down to 2, I'm going to create a budget, some for them, some for me, and we could start doing the coaching. Today with Barmetrix, we've served and worked with, we've served over 7,000 management teams around the world, and typically work with between 1,500 and 2,000 a year. And then I coach alongside that. I work intimately with bar and restaurant owners or senior executives. And I'm in Franklin House right now. It's my dream property. Every office I had before this was a shithole. One was above a HIV clinic. One was above the local foot doctor here who would burn warts, usually Mondays and Tuesdays. And the smell that it wafted upstairs, no one, like I paid nothing in rent, right? You'd want to vomit every time you did it. This is like a 120-year-old, 10,500 square foot mansion in the middle of town that I built a big bar up here and another bar in the basement. We have training rooms, and it's my dream place. So that's what I do now. We've got Barmetrix that runs. My partner, Ray, oversees that. And then I look after the coaching, and we still do some consulting. We work with a lot of the big liquor companies and beer companies and do some cool projects there too.
So how has your business changed since the pandemic? Because the hard thing in the hospitality industry, I found when I'm talking to my kids and stuff like that on Zoom chats, we do like the happy hour thing, but a big private one with all the kids is like the little social media bubble that we're living in right now is that everybody in hospitality is out of work, which is true, but there is still a lot of people who have got a ton of work. Bigger brands like the ones that you work with are still operating at some relative capacity. How has things changed for you business-wise since COVID hit?
Yeah, well, so two sides of the sword. Like our traditional revenue is gone on that division. You know, where we're providing those services in the back end, the inventory control services. Every bar shuts; they don't need those services, and we'll have a lagging effect too, right? Because again, we're not mission critical. We're important. Mm-hmm. We're helpful. So there'll be a lag there. On the other side, you know, the phone, you know, we do projects and we're busier than ever right now. We're doing a lot of stuff for free, but there's more opportunity that's come in the last 3-4 weeks than's come in the last 3 or 4 months, maybe the last year, right? Everyone needs help now in different ways. And, you know, everyone talks about being able to pivot. I won't pivot off of our core because, you know, I've always been in essential services. So we're lucky that we're in a place now between, you know, the government has and money that we have that we're able to to not have to reinvent ourselves. But if I wasn't thrilled with who we were coming into this, I would, that's what I'm coaching bar and restaurant operators to do right now. I said, if you limped into this thing, making shitty money and hating your job and working 1 million hours a week, hit a hard reset button right now. Reinvent your brand, come back entirely differently, because the market's going to be different, right? Everyone's got to change. So we're not totally different.
Do you find that I'm finding myself talking to a few restaurants and brands when it comes to adapting and innovating and going forward? Do you think there's a lot of romance about the old ways, in the way that, like, I've had a lot of restaurants come to me and go, you know what, like, we're not going to do to go. We're not doing any delivery or takeout. Our food doesn't plate well, doesn't work with our brand. Do you think that romancing what was 4 weeks ago, which was, in my opinion, already archaic thinking for a lot of restaurateurs, is continuing, even though, like, you've literally had the plug pulled out the wall on you?
Yeah. Well, let me share a few ideas here. And this may sound harsh to some. Firstly, the majority of businesses in our industry limped into this shutdown, right? I see the books on hundreds of businesses a year. They're not much. The business is so weak to begin with. They're not making much money. Like, I encourage all those people not to be precious about it now. Like, let's figure out, you have a box. That's all. Any bar that I ever bought, or any restaurant or cafe, just a box, right? And it's what you do inside of it. And you've got to adapt. And if you're not making 15% net profits every month, have a business you could work 40 hours or less, and something you're truly proud of, then make changes. It's time to go. Even if those things were true, you're going into a new market, you still got to make 20, 30% changes. The other folks have got to make 60, 70% changes on what they were doing. And when I hear people say that my stuff doesn't plate well and to go, like, fuck, you're a retailer. Retail, dude. Like, adapt to the market. I'd be making the best lasagnas you've ever tasted. I'd be making big salads. I'll be making what people want to eat now. And that's not me forever. That's me trying to stay connected with my customers, honoring my responsibility to keep my staff engaged and paid. Like, I just think some people have taken a selfish approach to this. Like, I'm going to put my feet up and I'm not going to, do those things because it's not me. It's not my brand. If your brand isn't survival and doing everything you can for your team, you should consider that,
So hypothetically speaking, post-COVID, what is your plan for 2020 after all this is over and rolling out? What's your big focuses, the 3 to 5 focuses you got for this year?
I think in no particular order, I've really enjoyed getting back to education. Shawn, you do this yourself, that the person that puts on the education learns the most, right? You do. You just so I want to continue that. Secondly, it's really re-inspired perhaps my call to serve. I'm on a bunch of committees. I'm on the Tails Cocktail Committee. I'm always there. I've done a bunch of work for the USBG in the past at a head office level. I work with the Boys and Girls Club, but I got a call today from Governor Hogan's office, who's the Maryland governor, to possibly work on the task force to reopen Maryland. So I'm going to find out about that tomorrow. And, to be honest, if I got that call, I said, well, what's the commitment? They're like, oh, it's a lot, we got to figure it a lot. And you've got specialized knowledge with these smaller businesses, and there's thousands of them. And so it's going to be a pretty heavy commitment. To be honest, had I heard that a month ago, I probably would have said, well, I really got to think about it. And today I said, I'm interested. If I can do it, I got 4 kids, and I got a business to run, but if I can do it, I will do it. And there's no money in that. It's just, just trying to do the right thing to help people out. Our core business, we are, not overhauling it, but while we're up on the hoist, we've got our team overhauling the marketing. We're working on our software. We're working on all kinds of pieces there. And then Franklin House, as I say, I'm re-inspired with the education piece. So I'm keen to, look to stack the deck with probably 100 operators in the near future. You know, I like coaching. I usually do 50 a year, but I might do 2 groups in the near future and help some people do good things with their business and their life.
Nice. Before I let you go, because I know obviously your schedule is insane. I saw you on a live stream literally half an hour before you came on this one.
Right.
So I appreciate your time. And you've always, for me, making that transition myself into consulting, I always looked at people like yourself, because we knew each other from back in the day, and sort of making that move and trying to, it's very difficult in my city. Victoria's tiny. Like, we've got 185,000 people in our city. It's a small city. So I know that my family wants to live here for the rest of their lives. My wife is born and bred here. And so moving isn't really an option. That's why I was in Singapore for 5 months last year. So I've always looked up to you. So it's always nice, especially with the insight you give, I think, to a lot of owners who are really scratching their head right now. Canada is, as you know, Canada is extremely difficult when it comes to running a restaurant, profit margins, especially when you start taking a small city mentality. But what would be the one piece of advice you would give to someone like yourself when you were 27 about opening your own restaurant and bar, sans COVID-19? Like, great times as always before all this. What would be your one piece of advice?
You know, I think my advice will come from my own failure and pain, is that, you know, you've got to be inspired with what you're doing, right? Like, to keep people motivated and keep them driving when you're not inspired yourself, is exhausting, and it comes with a serious price. And, you know, I got into the bar business to be in business, right? Not necessarily to be in the bar business. I could have been, you know, in a multitude of industries like anybody, but I became disconnected with what I love most, and that was connecting with customers, creating new things, new menu items, products, hiring people, developing people. And suddenly I found myself constantly negotiating leases, dealing with lawyers, dealing with accountants, dealing with tax structure, dealing with all of that. And I was too young and inexperienced to know that it doesn't have to be that way. Someone has to do it. But if that's not you and how you're wired, you got to make sure that you got to realize, if you want to get into business for yourself in the bar business, it's just another job, right? It sounds sexy. I don't know. Owning a bar, to me, I get offered bars every month. People want me to be a 10% partner, a 90% partner, or whatever. It'd be more attractive to say, I want to take you out in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay and throw an anchor around you and just watch it swim, right? It's a liability to me. But if it's not to you, like if it's what you want to do, you have to develop your job into something that inspires you. And here's the best way I can describe it. Like, everybody right now has a job, right? We all do something. And there's components of your job that get you down, right? I can't say that every day I'm doing shit that I love all the time, every day. But most of the day I am. Now, right? I do. Back then, most of the day I wasn't. So your job either gives you energy or it sucks your energy. It's one or the other. It's binary. And if you want to be a bar owner, you've got to get beside a bar owner, interview 5 of them, work for free beside one of them, right? Say, I will give you a month of my life and I will walk around beside you. I'll pick up things off the floor for you. I will do whatever you need me to do. I want to be with you. I want to watch this. If you still want to do it after that, make sure you design the job that makes sense for you so that you can bring the energy to work to inspire your whole team to do great work, and things will work out.
Wow. What's the one piece of advice, if it could be a singular piece of advice, for restaurant and bar owners right now who are sort of struggling with the decisions being made during COVID, which I'm sure you're talking to a lot of them?
Yeah. I tell everybody that, you know, do a complete assessment on exactly how things were going 1 month ago, and let go of everything that wasn't, hold on to the things that we were, and build the new stuff in, right? No one's going to judge you for making changes. The shit that wasn't working, if your business was only scraping by in a boom economy, you're going to get crushed in the new economy. You got to adapt and change. and you've got to be happy. You've got to say, hey, I'm excited about what I'm doing. And don't be afraid of pissing off some of your existing customers, right? You got to build a new tribe of 500 raving fans out of the gate. If you do that, they expand to 2,500 and you get the momentum to get on your way. The only way you build a tribe of 500 raving fans, you got to be willing to piss some people off and give up on folks. It doesn't matter where you are, in Victoria, Annapolis, Indianapolis, any city in the world, man. Find 500 people that treat your business like it's their own, and you'll have success. But that's easier said than done.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time, man. Thank you. It's some of your origin story stuff. It blew my mind. It reminds me of my dad. My dad was in the same boat. Like went to the military in the UK, born and raised in London. At 15 was said, you're either going to juvenile prison or you're going to the Navy.
Right.
And so he went off and then he met my mom, and my mom taught him how to read and write when he was 21. Still had an IQ of like 127. It was insane because he could name everything. He retained everything. And he reminds me a lot of like you. He's a instructor in Australia. One of the most prolific driving instructors for semi-trailers and road trains and that sort of thing. So your story really inspires me because it's the way I grew up. Like nothing's unachievable. Look where I came from. Look what I've done, sort of thing. Yeah. So I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome, man. It's always good to talk to you, Sean.
Thanks, man. I'll chat to you real soon.
All right, brother. See you soon.
See you, buddy. Bye.